The U.S. Central Intelligence Agency has accused Chinese tech giant Huawei of accepting funding from the People's Liberation Army, China's National Security Commission and a third branch of the Chinese State Intelligence Network.
Cyber and 5G, I think, will be coming out to your area pretty soon. You know, you've been treated very badly by past administrations in terms of the Internet, in terms of getting access to the Internet and everything else, and we're making it a priority. We call it rural America, but rural America is a big place, and it's very red on a map. You know, when you look at those maps from the election, there's a lot of red, but we're getting a lot of Internet, lot of Internet access.
According to The Times, the CIA presented the evidence to other members of the Five Eyes, signatories to the Joint Signals, Military, and Human Intelligence Sharing Agreement between Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the US, and the UK, earlier this year. The Times wrote that the CIA awarded a strong but not iron-cast classification of certainty to its findings, adding that a separate U.S. government source affirmed that the feds believe the Chinese Ministry of State Security approved funding for Huawei. More details on the nature of the funding were not presented in the Times article. While the U.S. government has long insisted Huawei poses a national security threat, has banned federal agencies from using its technology, and has reportedly been pushing allies not to let the company build out their infrastructure for next-generation 5G wireless networks, it hasn't presented hard evidence.
As some of you have mentioned, we do have today, compared to 5 years ago, a new strategy with China, but most importantly, we have a new kind of relationship with China. I would say a more intense one, but also a more frank and open one, based on clear words, clear principles, clear interests as well, that we are not shying away from affirming in the clearest possible manners. Trying to build some consistency in the approach the European Union and all its institutions are taking towards China.
In fact, The Wall Street Journal reported in January that U.S. officials do not believe they need to provide proof of espionage on the basis that China's communist government can simply order it to work with security services at any time. Some U.S. allies, particularly Germany, have seemed skeptical of the claims. Huawei has also been in the news regarding the fate of its chief financial officer Meng Wanzhou, who has been detained in Canada for possible extradition to the U.S. over claims of violations of Iran's sanctions and banking fraud. It's also facing charges of theft of trade secrets from U.S. companies. Huawei has strongly contested allegations that it operates as an arm of the Chinese security and intelligence apparatus and instead characterized them as an attempt to strong-arm them out of the race to 5G, which many believe it is currently winning. Founder Ren Zhengfei has also issued denials, and some analysts believe the company has little incentive to spy because any exposure of such activity would be immensely damaging. A spokesman for the company told The Times, Huawei does not comment on unsubstantiated allegations backed up by zero evidence from anonymous sources.
We've got another team. A team's working to warn our friends and partners against buying Chinese 5G technology and build out their infrastructure with Chinese equipment. These are companies like Huawei, which will take your private information and transfer it to the Chinese government. It makes no sense, and American diplomats are at the forefront of sharing this information with the world. None of us want our privacy, our freedom falling into the hands of the Chinese Communist Party. The final thing before I close.
Washington has three major purposes for blackening Huawei's name. First, it wants to attack Huawei and win time for the U.S. 5G technology. The U.S. worries that Huawei's devices will quickly become popular worldwide and thus will set a standard in the 5G era. The U.S. wants the world's most developed areas to separate from Huawei's influence. It wants the West to achieve high-tech decoupling with China. Second, the U.S. has to fight to the end because it has sent its requests to its allies. It wants to set a precedent that U.S. allies prioritize U.S. interests and demands. Some Western countries are still hesitating, and Washington worries that they will stay neutral in U.S.-China competition and gain a strategic initiative. Third, Washington did not use Huawei's devices in 4G, and it is resolute in not using Huawei's 5G devices as well. This means the 5G network in the U.S. is highly likely to fall behind China's 5G construction.
And while cyber, like space, carries enormous potential, it also is a vulnerability. These domains are absolutely critical for securing our future, and we are not sitting back while our Chinese and Russian counterparts or competitors aim to disrupt and weaponize them. These domains offer real opportunities for alliance collaboration. We are aligned in our view on this, and we are working together to adapt, integrate, and deploy capabilities faster. As we charge ahead on those fronts, we are also building capacity across all domains. We welcome and appreciate Japan's continued procurement of U.S. systems that promote interoperability, from F-35s and Aegis Ashore to V-22s and more. In order to bear the most fruit, our synergy must not be limited to our governments. Success also requires further integration of our industrial bases and protection of critical infrastructure. Information security is at the very core of our defense relationship, and we recognize and appreciate Japan's efforts to protect its national telecommunications infrastructure from high-risk 5G companies by restricting government procurement and mandating cybersecurity standards. As we look ahead, protecting the integrity and security of our national networks and critical infrastructure cannot just be a whole of government or intergovernment effort. It must be a whole of society approach. We must remain ever vigilant on this issue, and I know we will.
The U.S. does not want its allies to surpass it in 5G. During the later stages of 4G construction, China surpassed the U.S. in 4G network coverage and speed. This triggered China's leading mobile payment system. But the U.S. still leads China in modernization. What will happen if European countries, which match the U.S. modernization progress, follow the example of China in 5G, not the U.S.? Washington does not want to worry about this. It is ridiculous for a superpower to use almost every legal and diplomatic tool to attack a high-tech company. This is unprecedented in human history. But the U.S. may still lose its war against Huawei. This is because the U.S. accusations are groundless and untenable. Huawei is in the best financial situation of any company, and the U.S. has had doubts about Huawei's security risks for years. How can Huawei risk its reputation to gain but a little money from state intelligence and the army? Besides, Europe used Huawei's devices in 4G. Do they not remain safe? As China is labeled a strategic competitor by the U.S., Europe has become a card that the U.S. is eager to play. We believe Europe will cherish its independence. Countries that follow the U.S. on the Huawei case are merely buying Washington's favor, and will eventually lag behind and become a puppet. European countries should not be deceived by the U.S. and must understand all the environmental factors of Huawei's case. If they believe such false information that alleges Huawei is funded by the PLA, they are just like a kindergarten child at the mercy of their U.S. teacher.
In the area of security and defense cooperation, which is the foundation of Japan-U.S. alliance, we confirmed that we will enhance the cooperation in the space-related capabilities with the cross-domain operation cooperation. We agreed to promote cooperation for space situational awareness capability enhancement. We also agreed to enhance collaboration in the cyber area and confirmed that cyber attacks could constitute an armed attack for the purpose of Article 5 of the U.S.-Japan Security Treaty.
Huawei will roll out 5G phone network for the first time during this summer's Africa Cup of Nations, Egypt's Minister of Communications and Information Technology said on Sunday. The Chinese firm will introduce the technology at the 74,000-capacity Cairo International Stadium, which is set to host 10 games including the final during the competition. Egypt wishes to cooperate with Huawei in the field of artificial intelligence, technology transfer and with 5G, Amr Talat said. Huawei is the leading manufacturer of equipment for next-generation 5G mobile signal with almost instantaneous data transfer that will become the nervous system of Europe's economy, in strategic sectors like energy, transport, banking and healthcare. However, some Western nations have barred it amid fears Beijing could gain access to sensitive communications and critical infrastructure, but Huawei denies all these accusations. The biennial Cup of Nations takes place between June 21 and July 19 in the North African country. Defending champions and original hosts Cameroon are in a tricky group alongside Ghana, Benin and Guinea-Bissau. Egypt was awarded the staging rights in January, following the decision to strip Cameroon of the finals due to delays in preparation.